wall. 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 wall.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. It's going to be only America first. America first. The American people will come first once again. With respect, the respect that we deserve. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Good evening, everybody. We're watching America First. My name is NickJFuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back with you Wednesday, middle of the week. And we have a pretty substantial white pill to discuss with you tonight. A lot happening in the news. And actually, pretty good thing happened last night right after the show ends. Always funny how that works out. I feel like the biggest news happens when the show ends. Monday, after the show ends, Soph gets the hit piece written about her on BuzzFeed. Tuesday, after the show ends, abortion bill gets passed in Alabama. So I don't know what the deal is with the timing, but nevertheless, a very big white pill to discuss tonight. The hoes are mad. Hoes mad times 24. Alabama has outlawed all abortion, and if you perform an abortion, you go to jail for 100 years. Should be like 1,000 years, but anyway, it's very big, it's very exciting. They're saying it could go all the way to the Supreme Court and ultimately could challenge Roe versus Wade, which passed in 1973. So we'll be discussing that. We'll be discussing what's in the bill and what people are saying about it and go into all that, and that'll be our featured story tonight. But we are very excited about that because we've been watching the whole year. Whole year's been kind of rough for Christians, particularly for Christians. Been rough for conservatives, been rough for the white man. But you know what? Times like this, we really have to savor, we really have to celebrate. Somebody was posting, I think I saw on Twitter, that you haven't seen this much salt on Twitter from blue checks, from liberals, than since the election. I think that's basically true, right? So a huge victory there. We'll also be discussing Iran and the situation there. I know a lot of people are upset. And you know what? In the spirit of good faith, towards people of all IQ, quintiles, and quartiles, I'm going to break it down so well for you. We're going to give you the baby take, and we're going to give you the high IQ take. Because I feel like when I talk about foreign policy, there's a little bit of a disconnect. I know that probably the majority of the audience just isn't on the level intellectually quite to understand my takes on foreign policy, on geopolitics. You do not quite have the grasp on the subject that is required. So typically when I talk about foreign affairs, when I talk about foreign policy, I'll get a lot of upset people in the comments, a lot of upset people in live chat. So, you know, today as I'm watching the Iran situation unfold, and I see it so clearly, the calculus, it's so easy to me. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you tonight, the audience, and I will give you the expected baby take, and I think that should satiate everybody, you know, who wants exactly what they're looking for tonight. But then I will also, at the same time, give a little bit more of a nuanced take that you can expect typically from America First. We have to adjust the show's growing pains, I guess. We're going from sort of an esoteric, sort of fringe thing to like a esoteric cult following situation. So we're going to have to adjust it a little bit, appeal to the lower common denominator there. And so I think everybody will be happy with my take on Iran tonight. All joking, of course, all joking. It's jokes, everybody. So we'll be talking about that. And before we get into any of that, that's the current events. And it's actually interesting. We do have a lot of moving pieces. I feel high energy and good again because, between like the government shutdown, which was in January and February, and that whole situation, and maybe like now, maybe the last week or two, I feel like there hasn't been any overarching narratives. That's really, I think, where America First shines, is when we can keep an eye on a lot of different moving parts that are relating to one another, like, the government shutdown and the Israeli elections and these grand narrative arcs. And over the last couple of months, we haven't really had that. It's just like sporadic little events here and there, a mass shooting here, a mass shooting there, a law is passed, whatever. So now we have the Chinese trade war. We have this tension with Iran. And I think that's really kind of giving us a sense of purpose. It's giving the show a little bit of a narrative drive, So that's a good feeling. But before we get into the current events, because there is a lot to cover, between our situation with Iran and the baby bill, sort of some black pills and white pills, I do want to talk about a smaller, more minor news story, which actually came out, and I think everybody was reporting on this, actually. I saw the initial article that I saw was from the Wall Street Journal, and I was upset because I was like, damn it, when the Wall Street Journal covers something, I just can't participate because I don't pay for the Wall Street Journal, which isn't really fair. Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. You can get around Washington Post and New York Times if you use like a incognito browser window, because now they say you only have 10 free articles a month, and then you have to pay for it for WashPo and New York Times. But Wall Street Journal, it's just the whole thing's a paywall. So, and I don't want to give any money to the press. So I saw it from Wall Street Journal, but actually it was everywhere. NBC, NPR, they were all talking about it. It's new numbers from the CDC, and I'll read you the report. It says, quote, the U.S. birth rate fell again in 2018 to 3.78. I'm not going to read the whole number, but about 3.78 million births, representing a 2% drop from 2017. It is the lowest number of births in 32 years, according to a new federal report. The numbers also sank the U.S. fertility rate to a record low. It says, not since 1986 has the U.S. seen so few babies born, and it's an ongoing slump. 2018 was the fourth consecutive year of birth declines, according to the provisional birth rate report from the CDC. From 17 to 18, the numbers of birth fell 1% for Hispanic women and 2% for non-Hispanic white women, and also 2% for black women. The Census Bureau, and this is really where we kind of get the red pill here. It says, the Census Bureau has long predicted that America's future population growth will increasingly rely on immigration, despite a fertility rate that has historically been higher than similarly developed nations. According to this figure blew me away, and this is our last little paragraph here, and then I'll get into it. This number shocked me. It says, according to the Census Agency's population clock, the U.S. is currently gaining one person every 16 seconds, in part because it's adding one international migrant every 34 seconds. That number blew me away. I had never heard a figure like that, but I guess it makes sense. And actually, these figures are useful because it breaks down in a relatable way, in a way that sort of we can wrap our heads around these larger figures. There's a similar number that says that we give Israel $150 every second in foreign aid. So you tell somebody, as an example, we're giving Israel $3.8 billion per year in foreign aid. What's $3.8 billion? Most people don't know what $100,000 looks like or $1 million looks like. $3.8 billion? How do you even wrap your head around a figure like that in terms of an average person that is tangible to your average person? In practical terms, it's impossible. But if you break it down temporally, well, $3.8 billion for a year or $100 per second, and hey, the seconds add up. And I think the same is true when you look at the population. Maybe you hear 1.5 million immigrants per year. That's another number where how do you quantify 1.5 million people? The most people I've ever seen was maybe like 4,000 that I've counted, When I was in high school, we had the all-school assembly, so it's about, you could see 4,000 people. That's usually my basic unit. That's about as high as I can go. So how do you go up to, well, every 30 seconds, we've got an international migrant coming into the country. So just do the math on that. In the time since the show has started, been about 10 minutes since the show started. So what does that mean? 20 international migrants have come into the country just since the show started 10 minutes ago? Wrap your head around that. And that's really the nefarious population replacement agenda. I don't know how they continue to deny that this is happening. You know, think of this. The Charlottesville rally, this is my origin story. You know, if there were like a Marvel Cinematic Universe, what's the first installment? It's like NickJFuentes Charlottesville. You know, that's how I come onto the scene. That's my moment. That's my origin story. And that's what it is in the media, is the KKK neo-Nazi rally. Now, what is the slogan that made that rally what it is today? Why is Joe Biden running against Charlottesville in his first campaign ad? Because at the Charlottesville March, what did they chant in the Tiki Torch rally the night before? Jews will not replace us. Now, if we ignore the Jewish part for just a moment, you know, we talk a little bit about that on other shows, but if we ignore that little part for just a moment, the idea of population replacement, for years, and to this day, when the media addresses so-called white nationalist, white separatist, white identitarian, or even reactionary claims about population replacement, they treat it as though it's a conspiracy theory. They say, oh, they're not replacing you. It's a conspiracy theory. White genocide isn't happening. These are irrational fears stoked by fringe extremists. And so you have that on the one hand, right? And understand, like, that's really what it's all about. This past 3 years where they try and label Donald Trump a white nationalist, and you can't talk about immigration, and you can't talk about South Africa, and you can't talk about race and IQ, and we're banning people from the platform, and all the rest. That's what it's all about. It's about this one single central issue. And so on the one hand, they say, well, that's bogus. That's fake news. That's a conspiracy theory. And we ban that kind of stuff from social media because it's disinformation that's harmful to our democracy. So on the one hand, you have that approach. But on the other hand, you can quite clearly see in the most clinical numbers, in the most legitimate, you know, the people with the most credibility in government, the CDC. Okay, this is not davidduke.com, right? This is not npi.org, Richard Spencer's YouTube channel that's saying this. This is the Center for Disease Control and Prevention that says, yes, fertility rates are the lowest they've been in 32 years, lower than during the Great Depression, actually. And that's obviously outside of the baby boom when it went higher temporarily. But fertility rates are the lowest they've ever been. What did the Christchurch shooter say when he went into the mosque and shot 50 people? What did he write in his manifesto? It's about the birth rates. So they say anybody talking about birth rates is like the Christchurch shooter. But yet it's all statistical. It's all factual. It's in the report from the CDC. The fertility rates are falling through the floor. They're the lowest in history. It's not healthy. And that's in spite of the fact that we bring in millions of people from third world countries that have a birth rate of 2 or 3. You know, that's the most interesting thing. If you look at how the fertility rates have evolved over the last 40 years, they actually were at historic lows in the 1970s, lower than they are today. And then they skyrocketed back up to baby boom levels. Well, how did that happen? When you bring in millions of people from Mexico, and you bring in millions of people from India and China, and then from Central America, where the birth rate is 3 or 4, well, it gives you a little bump. And now everybody's going back down. Now the fertility rate's going back down to historic lows. What do they say the answer is? It's an economic problem. When the birth rate dips below replacement, what does that mean? Not going to have enough workers to fill the factories, to buy the products. How do we fix this economic problem? How do we fix the problem, make up the difference, compensate for the low birth rate? Well, as they say in NPR about the CDC report, the Census Bureau predicted America's future population growth will increasingly rely on immigration. Well, what does that mean? We are not making enough babies, so the babies will come from other countries. They called Steve King a white nationalist for this for years because he said, we can't make Western civilization great with other countries' babies. Isn't that exactly what they're proposing? Isn't that what the Census Bureau was saying? And the CDC, and NPR, and the mainstream media? Well, they're not making enough white babies, So we have to bring them in from Mexico. We have to bring them in from Asia. We are replacing the population that existed before. That cannot reproduce itself with a population of a foreign people. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's obvious. It's math. It's arithmetic. You know, to step it up a little bit. It's not merely math. It is arithmetic that we're not making enough, and therefore we've got to bring in others. And that's the solution they propose. Our solution, of course, is let's just shrink as a country. Hey, automation is going to cause technological unemployment that will it'll displace 70 million workers by 2030, and that's an actual number you can look up. I think it's more than 70 million. But about 70 million workers displaced by 2030 that are going to be out of work, that have to be retrained, given technical training. That's a situation as it is. What if we just shrunk the population? What if we just had less people in America? Why do we need to have 400 million people? Why is that a good thing? You're driving to work in the morning. Should there be more cars on the road? You know, you go to a sports game. You go to a crowded supermarket on a Saturday, or you go to a parade on a weekend. Do we need more people? You've been to any city lately? Do you need more crowding? I don't think so. Maybe we just stabilize the population. It dips down. We become healthy. Population's headed for 10 billion by 2100. There's not enough resources to feed all these people. Everybody should be maybe going down a little bit, and we could have a more sustainable, natural, organic world. But no, we have to keep buying, but we have to keep the money flowing, and that's what it's about. So I know that's pretty boilerplate stuff, pretty textbook, but it's always worth reminding you, you're not crazy. They report on this every day. There's stories about this kind of stuff every day, and they say it's a conspiracy theory, but you have to remind people, no, this is what it is. This is what we're dealing with. We're not psycho for pointing it out. It's from the CDC, folks. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there, but we're going to get to our current events. Got to mix a little red pill in there. A little conventional stuff there. But we're going to get to our current events. We'll talk about Iran first. And so I'll read off sort of the current situation. You guys know, and to give you a little background to kind of set up how we got here. Iran was never the focus of the Trump administration. And as somebody who's been watching politics for a while, it's actually interesting how things have evolved in that regard. If you paid attention during the Obama years, particularly in the second term, the focus of that administration was on the Middle East, particularly on Iran, on the Iran nuclear deal. And really for the past, I guess from 2000 to 2016, because of 9/11, right, and because of Middle Eastern terrorism and Israel seizing upon America's State Department to implement the clean break agenda, we have been focused on and fixating on the Middle East. But this is ridiculous. This is silly for us to do that. There's one reason why we've been fixating on the Middle East in the unipolar era. America has no more monsters to defeat. Soviets are gone. The Nazis are gone. Everybody's gone. So why do we select the Middle East out of all these groups? Well, there's one really good answer for that. The Israel lobby, right? So for so many years, we've been preoccupied. We should be in like civilizational retirement. We beat everybody, and now we get to enjoy the fruits of liberal capitalism, okay? We've hollowed out the family. We have sold our souls to the devil for material abundance. At least now we can enjoy a little bit. And Israel comes in and says, not so fast, buddy boy. We got a problem on our northern border. And Uncle Sam says, say no more. We're on it. It's for freedom. It's for democracy. So we've been preoccupied with that for 16 years. But really the more pressing threat that we should have been keeping an eye on was China. Well, we were over dealing with the Middle East, and there's sort of like this cartoonish fight going on, and it's just a big dust-up of us. And who are we fighting? We don't even know. It's Al-Qaeda. It's Saddam Hussein. It doesn't matter. There's no distinction. Shiites, Sunnis. We're kicking ass, 9/11. So all that's happening, and we've been watching, and I've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. China has been, it's like, bigger than exponential. It's just like straight up. $4 trillion that we have given them with trade deficits in the same time period, that we've been fighting and scrapping with these Muslims and turban people. They've been rising because we've been asleep at the wheel on trade. So we should have been focused on that. And I think in many ways the Trump administration has been a natural correction from the Middle East back to Asia. Trump has never been really so concerned about the Middle East. He started out, and what was the rogue state that he tackled? It wasn't Iran with the nuclear deal. It was North Korea. And that's why the focus on this show has always been North Korea over Iran, China over Russia and Syria, because it has truly been the pivot to Asia that was promised in the Obama administration but never came about. So that's just a little meta type stuff on where we're headed, some of the larger trends here. But now I think that Trump has got a handle on North Korea and China. We've had this rapport that's been built with them over the last 2 years, and that's been the focus. Now it seems like we're shifting a little bit back towards Iran. So last year, we tore up the Iran nuclear deal. It was around this time last year that the president went in. It's the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action put together by the Obama administration with John Kerry, with the Iranians. Also, you had Russia, China, France, the UK, and Germany involved in that process. And basically what that deal sought to do was impose limits on Iran's nuclear program, prevent them from getting a nuclear capability. In other words, getting the capability to build an arsenal. So that's not preventing them from getting a weapon, but preventing them from even having the capability to build a weapon. And in exchange for that, we gave them sanctions relief. We tore down the international sanctions regime that had been built up over decades, and their economy was allowed to grow. They got a little bit of an economic stimulus from us, and this created problems. They were able, with that cash injection, now that they're doing business with other countries, they're able then to finance an expansionist military operation in Syria, in Iraq. They've been gaining influence among the Shiites in Iraq, and they have militias that are in Syria fighting on the side of Assad, and so on. And so Trump went in and he tore up the nuclear deal last year, and the rhetoric was very important because I think this set the stage for Trump's Iran policy. He said, we don't seek war. We want the same thing with North Korea. We want a better deal. We want a deal, but we want a better deal that prevents you from getting a nuclear program, but also prevents you from building missiles, prevents you from expanding your influence in the region, and solves the short-term conflicts in Yemen and in Syria. And in exchange for doing that, for making this increased deal, we are going to make Iran a rich nation. We will be able to integrate Iran into the international system, and they can be wealthy. But in the meantime, we're going to impose crushing sanctions. We're going to do our best to bring the international sanctions regime back, and that means imposing sanctions on companies that do business with Iran. So one of the main criticisms of the Iran nuclear deal was that, having sanctions from Iran, from America on Iran, is easy enough to put back on Iran. If we say, okay, we're going to take our sanctions off, but if you do bad things, we can put them back on, that's pretty easy. What's much more difficult about the Iran nuclear deal is we told all of these nations that were a part of it to take down their sanctions regime. So for us to say, if you're not following the deal, we're going to put back sanctions on, that's not really the same situation because you don't get China, Russia, all these European countries to come back to the table so easily and put their sanctions back. So Trump did a little innovation and he said, well, you know what? Maybe we can't get all these other countries to sanction you again, but that's okay because we're the biggest economy in the world. So if they don't, well, we'll just stop doing business with their businesses and then they'll have to sanction you. So that's what we've been doing. It's been a high-pressure strategy to destroy the Iranian economy. And as I've been saying for years now, since that happened, the strategy is containment. We are either going to cause regime change from within, that people get so upset because the economy's in the toilet, inflation is high, their currency is failing, their economy is dying, and so on, that there's mass unrest, and you see that the Islamic regime falls there, or they make a deal. Enough pressure is generated that they come to the negotiating table, and we make a deal on our terms. And so that's been the strategy. That brings us up to speed to today, which we pretty much ignored them. Now the spotlight's back on Iran. And here's the latest. This is from the LA Times. It says, quote, the State Department ordered several hundred U.S. diplomatic personnel to leave Iraq on Wednesday, citing heightened threats from neighboring Iran amid a buildup of U.S. military forces in the volatile region and growing concerns of a potential conflict with Tehran. The State Department ordered non-essential personnel to leave the country from the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad and a U.S. consulate in Erbil in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq. The order affected about 30% of the staff, or several hundred people in all. The uptick in tensions came nearly 2 weeks after the White House warned of what it described as potential targeting of U.S. forces, allies, and interests by Iranian security forces and their proxies. In addition, the Pentagon has sent the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Task Force and Air Force B-52 bombers to the region and dusted off contingency war plans, according to the State Department. Now, what's important, and this is kind of a critical detail, is you have an admission by both sides from the supreme leader in Iran and our State Department official, Mike Pompeo, saying that they don't want war. This is according to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He says, quote, neither they nor we want war, referring to America and Iran. And Secretary of State Pompeo says, we fundamentally do not seek a war with Iran. If American interests are attacked, we will most certainly respond in an appropriate fashion. Okay, so this is the news. This is where we are. We're bringing you up to speed. Like I said, I'm going to give you the baby take, all right? You came to watch America First. And America First is a dogmatically non-interventionist show. War with Iran? That would be bad. They're saying they want 125,000 troops in Iran? Well, that's ridiculous. Mr. President, you ran saying Iraq was a mistake. And remember when you tweeted in 2012 that Obama would go to war with Iran to win re-election? This is not what you promised, and this would be a big mistake. Regime change in the Middle East is a big mistake. Big wars in the Middle East are too expensive and they cause lots of casualties and they're not in our interests. We know why the State Department wants regime change in Iran. It's because of Israel. It's because of the Clean Break memo written in 1996 by David Wormser, Wolfowitz, Douglas Feith. They all ended up in the State Department. The Clean Break memo that they wrote for Bibi Netanyahu said, in order to secure Israel's northern border, we have to destroy Syria and Lebanon and ultimately Iraq and Iran. The people that wrote that memo got in the State Department, and then we saw war with Iraq and war in Syria, covertly with the CIA, and we're still there. And now they want war in Iran. This would be a catastrophic mistake and a betrayal of American interests and President Trump's promises. Frankly, I am outraged. This administration looks more like George W. Bush III than it looks like the Trump administration. He's cucked and all that. Okay. Are we happy now? Is that good? Have we gotten that out of our systems? That, of course, we believe all of that. That is all true. All of that is factual. All of that is our conviction. But now that we have done that, we do that every time, right? Every time an aircraft carrier is sent out, every time an embassy is evacuated, every time there's a war of words, a threat of war, threat of military action, this is what is expected. This is the obligatory, non-interventionist screed, we are outraged and all this. Okay, thank you. Babies can go home. Babies are happy. We're good. We got that. Now, while I believe all of that is true, right, war in Iran would be a disaster. It would be a 10, 20-year occupation. The Iranian military is strong. They would be inflicting casualties on American soldiers. That would be their strategy. They would make it as bloody and as expensive as possible. The terrain makes the war very difficult. Somebody said to me once in an email, they're like, you've been saying this for a long time, but times have changed. When I say that desert and mountain is tough terrain and topography to fight in, well, look at Yemen, look at Vietnam. Clearly, this is still difficult terrain, right? So for a variety of reasons, war in Iran would be bad for our interests, would be too expensive, too costly, a political mistake, a political betrayal. All of that is true. Now that said, all of that said, if we can grow up and be adults and entertain things for a moment, let's look at the Trump administration. Let's look at our history here. We had the exact same thing happen 2 years ago. Does anybody remember this? I don't know. I feel like it's like my 51st dates. It feels like every show we have to go back and litigate, the past 3 years, or the past 50 years, or whatever. These people have short-term memory loss. Does anybody remember in April of 2017 when President Trump began his diplomacy with North Korea? How did it start? Did it start by him saying, I love Kim Jong-un, and we have no reason to fight a war, and we're going to become best friends? Or did it start by him saying, we will unleash fire and fury, the likes of which have never been seen? And he sent 3 carrier strike groups to the Sea of Japan to do a patrol. And he said, if North Korea wants to nuke us, they can go ahead because we can nuke them bigger and our nuclear button actually works. And there was missile tests and we were doing missile tests. And the report I read actually from 2 weeks ago about Mattis himself said that the president, during this diplomacy 2 years ago, actually ordered the defense secretary to withdraw all diplomatic people from South Korea so as to send a message to North Korea that they were serious about their threats. Mattis actually ended up ignoring that threat, so that's why we didn't read it at the time. But 2 weeks ago, the report from The Hill said that Donald Trump gave the order and said, hey, you have to pull out all of our consulate and embassy people from South Korea so that we can scare North Korea. You have to call up a big military meeting with John Bolton and all these other people to scare North Korea. And what was the end result? We saw that throughout this diplomatic process, it was bellicose rhetoric, it was gestures, missile tests, pulling people out of embassies, this kind of thing. It was, but at the same time, despite the bellicose rhetoric, despite the gestures and all that, at the same time, it was always, what is our end game? We do not seek war with North Korea. We can make North Korea a rich nation. We want to make a deal. However, if we are forced to defend our own interests, we will also do that at the same time that you have the economic sanctions. And what was the end result? What happened January 1st, 2018? Kim Jong-un comes out in his national address, in his State of the Union, that's the equivalent to North Korea, and says, we are going to do a joint delegation with South Korea at the Winter Olympics. And that happens, and then they say, we're going to have a meeting. They sit down, they have a big summit in June in 2018, and the rest is history. Now you fast forward 2 years, and what do we have happening? Trump says, Iran doesn't want, they're going to come to the negotiating table, because if they don't, there will be suffering in Iran, the likes of which have never been seen. And we're going to send a carrier there. You know what? Scratch that. We're going to send 2 carriers there. And we're pulling out all these embassy people from Iraq because they're going to get attacked. Yeah. Not because we're going to go to war with Iran. And it leaks to the media. We're going to send 125,000 ground troops there. And there's this fight going on in the White House between non-interventionists and hawks, and there's a fight going on in media. Trump, please don't go to war with Iran. And everybody just goes along, no, please, Donald Trump, don't go to war. So, like I said, on the one hand, if this is all legitimate, if this is all super serious diplomacy, and when Trump says, I'm going to send 125,000 troops there, if we're to take that at face value and be super serious and, engage in context denial, then I would say this is a big mistake. We have to back down from Iran. But if it is the latter, and it is another bluff, it is another one of these, kabuki geopolitical theater type episodes, as it was with Syria, as it was with North Korea, as it was with Venezuela, ultimately, as it was with all these different countries, then I would say let's see what happens. And I would say this much. You can debate whether or not it is in our interest to change Iran's behavior. I think that's a legitimate debate to have. Is it even in our interest to prevent Iran from having a nuclear program or a missile program or expanding their influence in the Middle East? I think that's a legitimate debate to be had. But, what I don't agree with is when people try to say, we have to. And if you don't take everything that Trump says about this, these kinds of geopolitical rows at face value, you're some kind of a cuck, it's 4D chess, it's whatever. So we can have the latter conversation. Once we all agree, the most likely scenario here, the highest probability chance is that this is some kind of a bluff, or this is a negotiating tactic. Well, then we can debate, is this something that's in our interest of the country? I happen to think it is. It happens to overlap with the interests of Israel. There's no doubt about that. People like to, if you say that you have this overlapping interest, people like to pretend that, no, you're only looking at it in Israel's interest or you don't know about it. Israel wants Iran gone. That's no secret. And we've talked about that for years. And what a disgrace that is. That Bibi Netanyahu will go on Twitter and he'll do videos in English telling the American people about how the Iranian people need to be liberated and all this kind of stuff. And there is a big push from the Jewish media and from the Zionists for war in Iran. Ben Shapiro, this has been his life's work, his life's mission, is to get America to go to war with Iran or to get America to change Iran's behavior. That would be a horrible thing, going to war with Iran. But using our leverage to change Iran's behavior so that we can stop nuclear proliferation, I don't think that's the end of the world. And actually, I think nuclear proliferation is against America's interests as well. Israel wants Iran destroyed. They want all the countries in the Middle East destroyed. They say as much in the Oded Yanon strategy for Israel in 1980. They wrote up a plan and saying, we want to create this mosaic of tribes with flags across the Middle East. And like I said, the Clean Break Memo says we have to start with Iraq and then Syria and then Iran, and then ultimately we can destroy Lebanon, right? So that's their end game. But using our leverage to prevent nuclear proliferation, to prevent countries from developing nuclear arsenals, and then having this domino effect of other people getting nuclear arsenals to hedge against those countries, that's a problem for America. And for people that say, well, why don't we just become friends with Iran? Israel is hurting us. Why don't we just become friends with Iran? I get it. If I became president, we would look at that. That would probably be a priority. But we also have to understand that there is such a thing as political reality. These interests are entrenched. Trust and distrust and rapport has been built for decades. So a lot of people said, for example, why doesn't Trump just get into office and become friends with Russia again? Well, Russia doesn't trust us. And we don't really trust Russia. And it's not so simple as there's not a good reason for us to be fighting, so let's be friends again, because you have such a thing as this security dilemma of, or the prisoner's dilemma, game theory basically, which says, how can they trust that we really mean what we say? We have to build up our trust with them again. And vice versa also has to happen. How can we trust that Russia will go along with what we want to do? We know that in spite of the fact that maybe it was America's fault, that we expanded NATO all the way across Eastern Europe and to Russia's frontiers, and that obviously provoked Russia. But in response to that, Russia has been duplicitous and deceptive, and they've worked against our interests. So on both sides, there has to be a recognition that we need to come together, and trust has to be built, and rapport has to be built, and this takes time. And so when people say, oh, well, we just should be friends with Iran, and Israel's real, we have to disarm Israel. Well, easier said than done. That ship has sailed. In the 1960s, when JFK was trying to prevent Israel from getting a nuclear weapon, that was maybe the time to do it. But now these things are set in stone. Deals have been made, contracts have been made, alliances have been forged, interests have been entrenched. And so all I'm saying is easier said than done. These things take time. A diplomatic revolution of flipping all the axes of international alliances upside down and on their heads, that's something that's a bit of a challenge. That's something that I think is in the realm of the unrealistic at this point in time. So that's what I'll say about that. But ultimately, getting Iran to not develop a nuclear weapon is in our interest, and I think that should be pursued. Where they overlap, it should be pursued. It's not worth it for us to invade, but is it in our interest if we just apply maximum economic pressure and they can't develop one, or we get them to come to the negotiating table? Is that a bad avenue to go down if we were to judge just that one trajectory? Would that be something that is worth pursuing? I think so. Because people don't understand, it's Iran gets a nuclear arsenal, and the Saudis have said if Iran gets a nuclear arsenal, then we'll get a nuclear arsenal. And people on our side have admitted Saudi Arabia is the one that is sponsoring terrorism more than Iran. Our State Department says Iran's the number one state sponsor of terrorism. Everybody knows it's the Saudis, right? So would Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates getting a nuclear arsenal, would that be in our interest? Would that be a good thing for America and the world? Probably not. And it doesn't end there. You could see Egypt or Turkey getting an arsenal. You could see that Iran develops this technology, develops an arsenal. Maybe they export it to other countries. That's what happened with Pakistan. Pakistan developed their nuclear arsenal. They stole it from the Germans. And where do you think Iran got the plans? Where do you think Israel got the plans for their nuclear arsenal? They got it from Pakistan. They got it from A.Q. Khan, who was the one who developed it there. And it spread to other countries. So you can see where that is in our interest to stop that from happening. And if we can do it at a low cost, at a reasonable cost, which is not a full-fledged 10-year occupation like it was in Iraq, but instead a strategy of economic containment and, again, this sort of high-pressure geopolitical tactic, then that's a trajectory that I have no problem with. If it turns into war, I want nothing to do with that. That would be a terrible, horrible, no good thing for the babies out there. We don't want that. But that's really how I'm looking at the Iran situation. So we'll see, but we'll see. Anything's possible. Anything's possible. I think that's the most likely explanation for the Trump administration's behavior. I think the most likely situation in the White House is that this is the same thing we saw with North Korea. Does that mean that war is impossible and off the table? No. So there should be concern about that, and we should be cautious about that. But again, I think if we look at the record of Trump's time in the White House, other examples of this, I think we can infer pretty strongly a high probability that this is what explains the recent behavior. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll see. If all that changes, I'll be the one to tell you. But I got to give it to you straight up. So I hope that satisfies everybody. I hope that was a take that everybody's happy with. But that's the Iran situation. We're actually, what are we? We're like 40 minutes in already, but the feature of the show, and we finally arrived at the feature, is actually not about Iran. That's all important and that's all interesting. But the real feature of the show is about the abortion bill, hoes being mad, very epic, very based and red-pilled. And like I said, it was right after the show last night that the Alabama State Senate, they passed a law. The legislation is called House Bill 314, the Human Life and Protection Act. It bans all abortions in the state, except when, quote, abortion is necessary in order to prevent a serious health risk to the mother. That's according to the bill's text. It criminalizes the procedure, reclassifying abortion as a Class A felony, punishable by up to 99 years in prison for doctors. Attempted abortions will be reclassified as a Class C. And it's a beautiful bill. It says very simply, you perform an abortion, you go to jail for 100 years, which is remarkable. What a huge victory for the unborn. What a huge victory for God. What a huge victory for life. Very substantial. And it was actually signed into law by the governor today, by Governor Kay Ivey. The bill's sponsor, Representative Terry Collins, said the bill is a direct attack on Roe v. Wade and anticipates that the bill will be contested by abortion rights advocates like the ACLU and potentially make its way to the Supreme Court. The sponsor said that that's actually exactly the point, and that's what they aim to do, is to get Roe v. Wade overturned and then ultimately have an effect nationwide on the state of abortion as a constitutionally protected right. Now, the law in itself, I like. I like it in both ways. You have to separate out, and nuance it a little bit here. The law says, okay, you perform an abortion, you go to jail for 100 years, no exceptions. Rape, incest do not count as exceptions. The only exception is if the mother is at risk of dying if the baby is delivered, if the baby's born. And that's an extreme bill. There are a lot of people say that's an extreme bill. And a lot of people say, well, I don't agree with the bill, however, I'm pro-life. Or I'm pro-life, but I don't like the bill. So that's on the one hand, you have that argument. On the other hand, you have the idea that, although this bill is a victory in itself, in my opinion, ultimately the end game is that that'll probably get struck down by a district court or, by a local court and eventually make its way up to the Supreme Court. And the ultimate goal is for it to overturn Roe versus Wade. For the Supreme Court to hear this case, because we have enough justices now on the court, then we'll be able to overturn it and make abortion illegal in all 50 states. Now, what I really want to focus on is the former. I think we all agree with the latter, that Roe versus Wade being overturned would be huge. And we wanted this to happen. That's the whole reason you get conservative Supreme Court justices up on the high court. It's so that when you get these kinds of big cases like this, you can solve them with the court. You can solve and get rid of Roe versus Wade, overturn these bad precedents. That's the whole reason. My nose itching a little bit because of my allergies. That's the whole reason that you get conservative justices. So I think that's basically uncontroversial. You're not really going to hear anything new about that, I don't think. But what I want to focus on tonight is the former argument, where a lot of people have been saying, a lot of the response to this bill has been, I'm pro-life, but I don't really agree with this bill. I'm pro-life, but that's a little extreme for me because of the duration of the penalty, 99 years, the severity of the penalty, or because they want exceptions for rape or incest. And this is really the problem. You're not pro-life if you think this is extreme. The pro-life position says that abortion is not bad. It's not something that's like, well, you don't like it, or, it's a little bit, it's probably inappropriate or unethical. Abortion is immoral. You're taking a life. It's murder. The whole point, the pro-life agenda, the pro-life position means that at the point of conception, the fertilized egg becomes a life, just like another human person, just like, anybody walking around. And if you kill a human person, you wouldn't say, oh, well, that's bad, but somebody going to jail for forever for killing another person, that's a little extreme. You can't kill a person for, there can't be exceptions to killing a person for X, Y, and Z. Well, that's too harsh. That's too extreme. Clearly, you're not pro-life then. And so to me, that's the real focus there. That's to me when a lot of people start to show their true colors. Frankly, I've seen a lot of, I saw some televangelical, how do you say that? Televangelist, whatever they call them. a very popular one. Jared Holt was actually tweeting about this, saying something to the effect that, I'm pro-life, however, this bill is too harsh. This bill is too extreme. And this is ultimately the problem with conservatives. They don't want to win. They don't really actually have any real convictions. That's really what this is about. The morality situation, the Christianity situation, conservative values, they don't believe in any of that. The people that run the conservative movement are atheists or they're Jewish. That's why they don't care. In Israel, abortion is not only legal, it's free. So, you got a lot of evangelicals and you got a lot of conservative leaders that they're all about Israel, but they're against abortion. Well, are they really? Why do you think it is that a lot of these conservative types, they're not really so fazed when this kind of stuff happens? They're not really so excited when we get a big win like this. It's because they're not really Christian. They think conservatives are evil. They think conservatives should be killed. And that's why they win, because they want everything that they say they want with all their might. They want it so bad that when they don't get it, they cry and they get mad and they go in the streets and they smash windows and they protest and they get out there. They call the representatives. They volunteer. They're in it to win it. And when they win, they drive the issue, man. When they win, they want total domination. They don't stop. Every time they win, and you can look at any victory over the past 50 years, whether it was Roe versus Wade, or it was Obamacare, or it was gay marriage, or it's transgender bathrooms, or it's a Confederate flag, it's always, this is a victory. But this is only the beginning. Our work is not done. This is only just the start. That is always the rallying cry, but we can always keep going. Scorched earth, until, there's like no conservatives left in the country. Everything's upside down, whatever, right? And what is the conservative answer? When we get an unparalleled victory, it's a total victory because the law is good and it has good consequences. It could get to the Supreme Court, and that's the first step in that process. And what's a conservative response? Well, I'm pro-life, but I don't know. That just seems a little cruel. That might make us look bad to the left. That might make us look bad to liberals. That might not really fly on television. I wouldn't want it to cost me any of my friends. I still want to go to the parties, I still want to go and hang with all my liberal friends. That's why we're doomed to lose until we get a reactionary right that is the same way as the left. But on the other side, unless we get ride or die people who want with all their heart what they say they want, the conservative cause, the Christian cause, the moral cause, and they want total victory. And when we win, we don't say, oh, well, we're going to give a little bit of quarter to the left, and oh, well, we're going to moderate it a little bit. We're not going to crush them completely, but people that will go further. People will say, we won, and here's how we're going to now just start gutting these people. We're going to skin these people alive, and we're going to keep marching until there's none of them left. And of course I'm speaking politically and rhetorically, not actually in terms of violence, but we have to adopt that same mentality, because to me, that's the sickest thing I've seen from this. The left is upset, and I love that. Hoes are mad. Alabama says you can't kill babies anymore, and hoes are mad. They said, but we want to kill our babies. We want to kill babies. We hate babies, and we want to kill them all. Hail Satan. And Alabama says, not so fast. Not on my watch. God's country. We love Alabama, right? And hoes are mad about that. So that's a great victory, and everybody knows that, and everybody sees that. And I don't think that really even needs to be said, right? That they're all upset. The real problem that we see from this is that people on the right don't even see it as a victory. They get their victory, and they say, no, but we don't really even want to win, actually. That victory's too good. They're addicted to losing. And I think until we cycle these people out, these people out of the party, out of the movement, move people into a more hardcore disposition, we're doomed. It is game over because they want blood and we're willing to pass the ball. It's basic. That's my favorite analogy, is the sports analogy. I'm a big sports guy, as you know. Big fan of, all sports, football, baseball, basketball, can't get enough. The sports analogy is very simple. If you think about politics, less like coming together and holding hands, but more like a team sport. Imagine you have, two teams on a soccer team. And on one team, the Democrat team, they only pass to their own teammates. And they want to score, they pass to their own teammates so their own teammates can score for their team. And on the Republican team, they sometimes pass to their own teammates so they can score, but maybe 30%, 40, 50% of the time, they pass to the other team because it's fair, or, they want to, they feel they have an advantage, whatever, for whatever reason. They're Jewish, they're atheists, for whatever reason, they're secretly on the other team, but they're wearing the wrong jersey. For whatever reason, 30, 40, or 50% of the time, the Republican team passes to the Democrat team. Who's going to win the game? Who's going to score the most goals? A team that only passes to their own people, and the team that passes half the time to their own team and another half of the time to the other team. It's going to be the Democrat team every time. And that's a perfect analogy for what happens. The Democrats win and they crush. They want to go all the way, after the Facebook bans. Perfect example. After the Facebook bans, they say, that's not good enough. Oh, so Facebook just banned a few white nationalists? What about 100 other people that need to get banned? That's not good enough. Mark Zuckerberg, he's not a white nationalist. Well, what about these 150 other people he has yet to ban? You know what? I'm sorry, but he's a racist, and he's sympathetic to them. He only did this as a political ploy, or whatever. That's their mentality. 10 conservatives get banned. We're up in arms, but you have to ban 100 more. We see a left-wing person get banned, like Louis Farrakhan as an example, who's not really left-wing, but you get the picture. Somebody gets banned who, might be considered on the other side because he's, identity politics guy. He's black, Nation of Islam, whatever. They see somebody who they don't perceive as on their team, Republicans. And they say, you know what? We're not only going to stand up for our people, we're going to stand up for Democrats too. We're going to stand up for free speech in general. We have to stand up for everybody on the right. And you know what? We're going to speak out for people on the left too. Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin. They say, well, I don't necessarily agree with, Disney's decision to rehire James Gunn, or I don't necessarily disagree with the NFL's decision, whatever, but I defend their right as a private company, or whatever. They will always carry water for the other side in the spirit of the principle, in the spirit of fairness. And the other side says, at all times, persecute the enemy, give them no quarter. Give us an inch, we're going to take 100 miles. We're going to take a light year, And so that's my main. When I see this Alabama bill, I'm happy. I'm celebrating. But I also see that Republican cancer, this horrible brain virus that says we get a victory, no, but we don't actually want it. So in short, that's what I'm mad about. But you know what? It's a good day. We shouldn't spend the whole show bagging on Republicans, being upset about it, because you know what? Hoes are mad. Babies are saved, and hoes are mad. And that's something I think we can all smile about. It's a very important issue. It's a genocide basically being waged against babies, against the unborn. And so any step that we can take, I think that validates the Trump administration, honestly. The Trump administration has been incompetent on a lot of things, but if we can get somewhere on abortion, that makes him a good president. That makes him a very godly president. That's a huge thing. So remember, we have to be a moral nation first. That's really number one. That's when it all started to go downhill, is when we relinquished our morals, relinquished reason. So very critical, very big victory in that regard. But that's the abortion bill. Hoes are mad. What more can you really say except for hoes mad 24 times, right? But we're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys are saying here. I was running out of time. I'm going to take a little sip of my water here. Going to take a little sip of my water because my mouth is dry. Usually I don't have water in here, but filled it up today. And let's take a look. We'll see what are the unwashed masses saying tonight. Peanut Arbuckle says, just ate dinner at my parents'. My mom made chicken parm, much better than a Big Mac. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I just like the fast food. I just like the way it tastes. I know chicken parm is better for you. And probably a better taste, I guess. I don't know what it is. I guess it just must be a chemical addiction that you just, that you just like it, even though you can't really explain why. It's just like you like it because I want it. It's good for me, So chicken parm is actually ultimately more rewarding. But the Big Mac is like a cheap thrill. And there's something to be said about cheap thrills. Life is long, and yeah, we want that deeper satisfaction, but there's something to be said about the simple things, the cheap thrills, little enjoyment. Now, you can't make that your whole life, but I'm a big believer in that. So, anyway, Brian says, love the show. Keep doing the thing. Pee pee poo poo. Hey, thanks. Jeffersonian says, Nick, I finally became a premium member to watch the Jesse Lee Peterson interview. Enjoying the extra content. Any more epic collabs planned for the future? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe a big epic collaboration next Friday. Maybe Friday the 24th, we're going to have a pretty big guest coming on the show. You know, a lot of people said Jesse Lee Peterson was maybe the second most requested, but who was the first? I don't know. Maybe there'll be a guest appearance next week. I couldn't tell you. Maybe I'll announce it later this week. But I'm glad you're enjoying the premium content. Yeah, remember, the Jesse Lee Peterson interview that I did is only available behind the paywall. You got to become a premium subscriber. Link in description. $5 a month. So be sure to check that out. CG says, hoes mad, crab rave on repeat. Hell yeah, man. Hoes are mad. What does that tell you, though? What does that tell you that Alabama says you can't kill babies and hoes are mad? What does that tell you? Maybe about hoes? I think it says a lot. Justin says, hoes mad. So true. Smile says, I was red-pilled before, but your show made it into a coherent worldview. Also, please go to a college where Ben Shapiro is speaking and ask a hard question. I'm glad to hear that. That's what I try to do. Because so often, and I think that was the big problem with 2017, is that it was so unrefined. It was so just, it was the alt-right was the id of the movement. It was, we just found out about all this stuff and we're mad and, you know, we found all this alternative information. We can't trust the media and we just want to do something. And so what we've tried to do, the project has been to sort of refine a lot of that into a coherent, sensible worldview, moderated a little bit. So I'm glad to hear that. Go to a college and ask Ben Shapiro a question. I don't want to do that because in that situation, he has a little bit of high ground. It's not a fair exchange. So it's not a very optical exchange to do something like that. Cool Ranch says internet censorship, but only, for women. So true. Would anything of value be lost? Women being censored on the internet? The only thing that I can think of is Ann Coulter. Who was the other one? Michelle Malkin. Maybe a few others. Faith Goldie, I guess. So, but honestly, the ends justify the means. Tony says middle-aged white women in menopause outraged about Alabama's abortion law. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Sam says the give unto Caesar Bible verse is actually a prophecy about Constantine. I hate when fedora tippers try to use this verse. Sell your cloaks. Yeah, very true, very true. Good points. John Q says, when I got back into communion with God and his church, the reality of abortion, hell world, was a big spiritual challenge. I'm so happy to see our leaders taking a step to ending child sacrifice. Hoes mad. Hell yeah, man. So true. That's what it is, child sacrifice. It's a society built on the sacrifice of the unborn. Jimbo says, Nick, we get it. You watch Rick and Morty. Stop flexing. Yeah, well, I'm a high IQ person. This is a high IQ show. Maybe your IQ isn't high enough to understand all my takes, right? Darrington says, to be fair, it takes an incredibly high IQ to watch America First. Yeah, I get it. NC Rid says, I'm going to go to prison tomorrow. I will miss you, Nick. Sorry to hear that, if that's true. Praying, I don't know what you're going to prison for, but I guess praying for your timely release. But yikes. Steve says, hey, Nick, my Gaelic friend is a fan of the show, but won't give any shekels for Big Mac. Has he been compromised by the people? Could be. I'm a Gaelic brother. I don't know why he wouldn't want to support his fellow Celt, his fellow Irishman. But that's all right. We don't do it for the shekels. Blake Mitchell says, is jiu-jitsu gay? Just started and I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think self-defense is something that should be learned, and I guess jiu-jitsu is good. I'm not a martial artist, so I don't know. The only thing that's gay to me is wrestling, amateur wrestling. Because I used to wrestle when I was in, like, 4th grade, I think. I used to do wrestling at the high school. Like, not cool pro wrestling where you're doing choke slams and clotheslines. Like the amateur, like, collegiate kind of wrestling. And it was weird for me because, you know, I don't know. I feel like if you make a big deal out of it, that's almost pushing, like, well, why do you have a problem with it? You know, just be a guy and wrestle around. But by the same token, it's like, it's a lot of physical contact. I'm not like a well-socialized person. My socialization, I don't think was healthy, to use the clinical term. My socialization was probably not, what it should have been. So I already was sort of an awkward kind of a kid. I had trouble making friends as it was. And then you go to wrestling, and I had my friend from school who I knew for years, he was my main wrestling partner. We'd do the practice moves and we'd do matches. And I didn't really have a big problem wrestling with him because it's like, I know this guy, I'm comfortable with him. But then when he wasn't there, because sometimes he wouldn't show up, it would be like, okay, now you got to wrestle around with this other person. And I'm like, I don't even know you. Now I got to be crawling all over and doing all these moves and things. And not to make like a big deal out of it, but it was just like, it's a little much. It's a little over the top for me. A fight is like striking. It's for a brief, I guess the two elements of fighting is striking and then grappling. There's the upright, but then ultimately he gets to a grapple. And that's, I guess, like kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. But the wrestling that you're doing, it's just like this prolonged and just like, it was a little much for me. So jiu-jitsu, I don't think is gay. I think if any one of them were to be, a little bit there, I think it would be the amateur wrestling. It was a little too much for me. Because I was a big fan of pro wrestling. So I was like, that's not why I started doing the wrestling, but I thought that was cool. I thought that was based in Red Pill. I was a big WWE fan, but the actual amateur wrestling, I'm like, you know what? Why don't we just shake hands? We'll just call it a match, whatever. So in conclusion, jiu-jitsu not gay. Let's see. Norwood Nix says, when I said your philtrum looks wacky, I meant the area between your upper lip and your nose is too long. You could easily hide it with a stash. It's not too long. It's not too long. It's the same length as the length from my chin to my lower lip, which is what it should be. That's how you know that's good physiognomy. Yeah, so you're wrong. You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. Space Commando says, hey, Nick, I can't decide what class to play as in Guild Wars 2. Should I be a Mesmer, Guardian, Necromancer, or Warrior? I don't know that game, but I always go Warrior. I never mess around with the magic type classes. I always go Warrior. When I'm playing Realm Royale, Warrior. When I'm playing Dokapon Kingdom, Warrior. When I'm playing Star Wars Battlefront, just plain old infantryman. I'm not one of these people that do a specialized healer, magic ability. I usually go with who's the guy with the highest strength, So don't know Guild Wars, but that's usually my mentality. John Roberts says, love that you've been collabing with Big Bear Owen Benjamin. He is based in Red Pill. I'm on a subreddit for fans of his, the Unbearables. Cool. Pee poo poo. Oh, well, that's good to hear. Thanks. Yeah, it was a fun stream. John Doe says, Washington was just rated best state to live in the country. When will you build the Aryan plantation down the street from Nostradamus tier Owen? I don't think I would move to Washington. If I'm moving anywhere, I don't know where I'm going to move, but probably not the Pacific Northwest. It's just totally foreign to me, So I don't know where I'm going to go, but maybe North Dakota, maybe South Dakota, maybe Montana. But Washington, I don't know. I'd have to visit first. I've never been. Libertarian Culture says 40 illegal immigrants came in during the lobby music pre-game to the show. Yeah, there you go. International migrants, though, so that's legal. Jonathan says, raise the minimum to $5. The amount of fecal matter is worse than a hot day in the street in San Francisco. Hashtag hose mad. I don't know how to do it, so I don't think I can, actually. Libertarian Culture says government is a Ponzi scheme. That's why it always needs more people. Libertarian take. Yeah, that's great, dude. Norwood says, Nick, where the heck is your upper lip? Okay. Tyrone says, I didn't raise no kid of mine to be a knicker lover. Probably because you're a libtard. Is that it? Doc Daniel says, yeah, Spotlight, Moonlight. Thank you, X. George says, thoughts on third position and do you like Cultured Thug's videos? I don't know Cultured Thug. And third position is National Socialism, right? So I'm not a National Socialist. Doc Daniel says, hello, Nick. Just letting you know I am making a new Minecraft world. Lewis, Brindley, Kensington, and Fairfield. Dafty's, Brecht, Nationalism. Okay, thank you. I don't know what that means, if that's some Kiwi thing. Darrington says, hello, State Department. I got a clean break memo to file. Yeah, it's so true. George says, thoughts on The Romanian Iron Guard. Okay. Yeah, we're going to, when George Rockwell is sending you super chats, we're just going to have to hide that. No, thank you. Anne Marie says, I might be a boomer, but these hussies are mad. Yeah, very true. James Russell says the difference is that there's people like Bolton and Pompeo in now, hell-bent on destroying Iran without anyone in the admin wanting to talk to Iran. Except Pompeo literally said himself, we don't seek war with Iran. And actually, you're wrong, because John Bolton got into the State Department as a national security advisor the April before the June summit with North Korea. So you're just wrong about that. James Russell's always with the bad takes. Sorry, man. MD says 2 pillars brought down with the Temple of Solomon on Tisha B'Av. 2 towers brought down with the Solomon Brothers building on 9/11. Very interesting coincidence. Yeah, really makes you think, huh? Doc Daniels says, send Nick $10,000 in super chats if hoes mad. I agree. If the hoes are mad, you got to send it our way. James Russell says, but yes, I understand your argument. It's just that we can't compare North Korea to Iran, which our lobby is hell-bent on destroying more than North Korea. Yeah, I get that, but where's the sign that we're really serious about it? We wouldn't be telegraphing these moves if we were. You know, if we were going to go to war with Iran, would we be saying, we're going to attack you, we're evacuating our personnel, we're sending care, we're going to blow you up, when we just do it covertly? For months, the situation was silent before the war in Iraq to give us the element of surprise. So we would see the troop movements, we would see things, it would be a different story. D Sharp says, he fights for us. So true. Doc Daniel says, I have bought the same Moroccan chicken couscous salad 43 times, and for the past 3 times, there's been more kumara than chicken. I'll be spending my salad money on Nick instead of Globo salad. I don't know why you're eating that crap. The Moroccan stuff, I was never a fan. I think I've had Moroccan food like 1 time, and I completely forget when, but I don't like this ethnic food. The only food that you need is European food, Asian food, and Mexican. That's really the only good stuff. You know, Italian, I don't know what continental European food is, but Italian food, Mexican food, sushi, I guess, Asian food, American food, but everything else, why? You know, Indian food, African food, Middle Eastern food, why bother? It's all just a bunch of gross stuff. So I don't understand that. Professor says super chatter exists. Nick proceeds to block user, exhales intensely, laughs in, could use Big Mac right now, anger, BTFOs, all super chatters. Yeah, that's an accurate description. Crazy Life says, Nickers, have you seen the Muffin Man? Oh, thank you for that. Tyrone says, Nick, trust me, buying a link now up till $1 and sell targets at 15 to 20. Big price action, estimated Q1 2020 because of European PSD2 decline. Yeah, I've been following the chain link thing. I've been on Biz the past couple of days, and I've been seeing a lot of the chain link astroturfing, you know. And I've been watching the price, and I heard about, what is it, the chain link Manet or Manmet or whatever it's called, where they're going to, and I don't even know what they're talking about. I go on the Chainlink website. It's like, it's a smart contract and it blah, blah, blah. This is all gobbledygook to me. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's a smart contract and it's blah, 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 and it's connecting your refrigerator and your microwave, and it's the bridge between crypto. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have the technical language for this. So yeah, I've heard about it. I know Sean has been pumping it, and I was up to like 80 cents the other night when I was looking at it. So I don't know. I'd have to do more research before I buy in. But yeah, there's a lot of action. And the Legend of Zelda connection, you see that? I don't know. It makes you think. Meme magic, perhaps. Doc Daniel says 2,000 views. Ops down to 1997, back to 2,000 now. Oops. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It went from 2,000 to like 1,700 in like a minute. So I don't know what happened there. Maybe it was the super chats. Norwood Nick says, Doc says post-birth depression is a serious health risk. I don't know about that. Evan says, I've been bringing on past debates. I miss you stabbing with your knife. When is the next one? Is everyone scared? Yeah, everyone is scared, honestly. We can never get a debate opponent because everybody is literally, they know that they will be defeated. So we've tried, you know, and we had our most recent debate with Destiny. That was like a month ago. But it's hard now. Glenn C. says, I haven't seen women this salty since the election. Can't imagine the salt after we take away their right to vote. Dabs. I wish that was on the horizon, but unfortunately, I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. It's not hard to see why we should ban women from voting. If only women voted, the country would go Democrat by like 500 and what's the maximum? What is it even? 536 is it or whatever? I can't think of it right now. But you would get Democrats get all the electoral votes if it's only women voting. What does that tell you? So I wish, but I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. Deputes says, God bless Alabama. Israel sold nukes to South Africa and sells stolen U.S. military tech to China. Who should we sanction to really stop? Yeah, we know. I know they sell it, but proliferation is, that's the thing. People say, well, Israel is a real threat, so proliferation is a threat, but they already have an arsenal. If they have an arsenal, they already have the arsenal. Iran does not yet have the arsenal. We're stopping proliferation, the spread of, not the existing. So would it be good if we could roll back Israel's nuclear program? Yes, but again, like I said, the precedent is such, logistical things are such that is just not practical at the moment. And I wish it was. That would be ideal, but that's just not practical right now. Price of Conquest says, probably going to sound low IQ, but based on your comments on Washington last night, do you think the farmers were satanic? Please, or the framers were satanic? Please elaborate, big guy. I don't know if they were satanic, but I definitely think there was satanic influence. I definitely think there was Masonic satanic influence. All the founders were Masons. I think ultimately the framers of the Constitution were not the kind of caricature that they were made out to be. But by the same token, I do think there were evil forces at work in the designing of the city and all of that. So I don't know. It's kind of difficult. I would say that a lot of the framers are good and actually pretty close to like a Thomistic vision of what government should look like in many ways. But by the same token, very Masonic themes going on. So it's kind of complicated. Denal says, loose females are peeved. Yeah, hoes are mad. Renovated says, Nick, when are you having P. Michael Poo on? Okay, you know what? I'm just going to ban people who do this now. Mister says abortion should be mandatory for rape babies. I am not down with vindicating rape as an evolutionary strategy. That's how you end up with Africa. That's a low IQ thing to say. The original name says, hey, Nick, thought I would send my first super chat to America First. You do what you do excellently. Nick Fuentes and Jay Dyer making Christianity cool again. Hey, thanks, man. Hopefully we're doing that. Honk Pill says, how much was your Mustang? I want to buy one. I'm not telling you. What are the IRS? Why do people always want to ask me about the finances? Look on your own. You want to know how much it costs? Look on the internet. Sadcast says, what if the kid is born addicted to crack or pause? Then they just get treated, but there's no reason to kill it. Should we kill people that are on crack? Should we kill people that have AIDS? Well, maybe in some cases, but not if they're babies. Welder says Trump is setting himself up for Israel to false flag attack one of those carriers he's sending to patrol Iran. It's the USS Liberty all over again. What a stupid thing to say. What a stupid thing to say. The USS Liberty was a false flag? What, are you retarded? USS Liberty was not a false flag? Oh my God. This is the problem. This is when you get pole brain. NPCs in every movement, the vast majority of people are low IQ in every movement. And this is what I'm talking about. We're sending aircraft carriers there to false flag. Iran could not take out an aircraft carrier. They don't have the technology. So anyway, the idea that that would even be possible is a joke. But saying, we're going to do a false flag on an aircraft carrier, just like the USS Liberty. Do you know what the USS Liberty was? It wasn't a false flag. They attacked the USS Liberty comms ship so that they could cover up this massacre of Egyptians that was happening. And what everybody in the government knew it was the Israelis. It was not a false flag attack. We didn't go to war with Egypt as a result of it. That's not what dragged us into the war. They attacked the ship because it was a reconnaissance ship so that they could cover up what they were doing to the Egyptians, because they had to move their forces up north because it was a multi-front war. They'd taken in a bunch of Egyptian POWs, and they were about to massacre all these people, and then they saw the ship over there. They didn't want them to see what was going on, their conduct, so they moved so that they could move their forces up, so they took out the ship. But it wasn't a false flag. It's not even close. Not even close to what you're talking about. And anyway, a false flag on a carrier. It's just ridiculous. A carrier group has so many ships and so many defenses. The only country that could even come close to taking out a carrier would be China and Russia. And they're not going to attack us. So that's just a dumb thing to say. Depute says, search celebrities and great men born from rape. I don't know what you're getting at. David says, making infanticide illegal again. True. John Archer says, Alabama, primal cry of righteousness, meaning clearing the way of weeds and thickets. We give no quarter to the demonic sacrament of abortion. The heart of Dixie beats for God and his people. True. A lot of good people in the South. Let's see. We got Hong Pill who says, FYI, Walter from Drake and Josh is a chosen one in real life, and so is Josh. Interesting. Good to know. Mister says, tell Hoff to stop diddling children. Okay. Josh says, keep up the outstanding job, boss man. Hoes mad? Yep. Yeah, hoes are mad. Confirmed. Samo says, isn't it interesting that the far left is so obsessed with child sacrifice? We are witnessing spiritual warfare and must accept Christ. So true. Yeah, it should make you think that they believe they have a constitutional right to kill babies. Kind of a big coincidence, or maybe it's a spiritual war. I'm thinking it's spiritual war. Gavin says, hey, Nick, been watching you since the NR days. I missed the Cassie Dillon sound bites. If you got offered to, would you go on the Rubin Report? Yeah, probably. But yeah, those were pretty good. The sound drops that we used to do on Nationalist Review. Wow, good times. Nationalist Review. Don't you remember that podcast from back in the day? What was that? August to December 2017. Wow. August to January. Good times. That was a good podcast, you know? That was a different time. Different time in my life. It feels like, it actually feels like it was a long time ago. Actually. You know, I know people might tell, it feels like yesterday. It feels like a long time ago for me. But yeah, good times. Amor says, would you collab with Pee Pee Poo Poo? Great. NC says, just got out of prison. These guys called the Aryan Brotherhood all really like your work. Oh, good to know. Midwest Mariner says, hey, big guy, first time viewer here. I saw in the description I could get some kind of premium Discord role if I become a paying member. Thanks, big guy. No, the Discord got shut down, so you can't. German says, go with the solid tie, stop with the stripes. Okay, banned. What a dumb idiot. Cloudstar says, Nick, I would have guessed that you're a Paladin player. No way. Sammy Davis Jr., thoughts on music? What's your favorite genre? Big fan of prog rock myself. I like a lot of music, rap, alternative, a lot of the classic stuff, you know, so I'm kind of all over the board. Jeremy says, hoes mad, yeah. Logan says, do Catholics believe in reprobates? Just wondering. What's a reprobate? Isn't that just like an immoral person, or... Reprobate. My wireless keyboard is failing on me here. Unprincipled person, humorously or affectionately. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're against sins, so I don't know if that flies. Smelly says, how to tell Mom Drake and Josh is on tomorrow. Okay, you're just banned. McDowell says, broke, pro-life, woke, jerking off is murder, bespoke, an egg for every soldier. Okay. Chancho says, hey, do you know anything about the obelisk in Argentina, and why are Argentinians so short? I don't know why they're short. Probably because they're all descended from Meds and Indians, all pretty short people, right? And I don't know anything about the obelisk. Gregory says, are the Alabama abortion laws one step closer to repealing the 19th? LOL. Yeah, definitely not. The Champ says, whatever happened to Joe the Boomer? Good show today. He's still out there doing the Daily Brap. Okay, and our last one from Cloudstar. Alabama's just a pendulum swinging the other way from things like what New York did. Like you said, this is just the beginning. Yeah, hopefully, right? I hope it's the beginning, but I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like... I don't know. It seems to me like these victories are few and far between, so I wouldn't get too excited. It seems to me like this is more the dying gasp of the conservative movement, of Republicans, of white people. You know, whenever you see these tiny little victories, don't mean to put a damper on things, but it feels like Trump, all this other stuff, in many ways is sort of the dying gasp of the old country. Because we know it'll get shut down by the courts, and is there a good chance it'll get overturned in the Supreme Court? I don't even know with the way things have been going. So I don't know if it's the beginning. Hopefully it is, but we're at a crossroads here. Very critical point. Will it be the end or the beginning? I think time will tell. Patty says founders were demonic. Freedom of religion was a weapon to keep the true Catholic faith from America. If you interview E. Michael Jones, I'll subscribe to your newsletter. Be Catholic. Okay, thank you, Patty. Okay, that's all our super chats. I think that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm tired. My mouth is dry, and I'm hungry. So that's going to do it for us on our show tonight. Remember to check us out, NicholasJFuentes.com/membership to become a premium subscriber. The link is down below. It's only $5 a month to get one additional show every week. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Give us a big thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. Click the notification bell to be notified every time I go live. Remember, we are on the air Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm Nicholas J. Fuentes. As always, thank you guys for watching. Thanks to our Super Chatters, Premium members, everybody who watches the show. We love you, folks. And we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, have a great rest of your evening.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. It's going to be only America first. America first. The American people will come first once again.